Hello everyone. Today is going to be a quick tutorial for a short combo that I showed in a YouTube short a few weeks ago, which is this one. So I started this trick off with a whip rollover because it's a straight to the point trick that builds momentum for a choker fan nicely. To learn the combo, you can use whichever trick that leads into doing a choker fan consistently. You could even learn it starting from like a wrist pass movement like that, or you can start it like this where you just throw out the handle and get into the choker fan that way. Since I would consider the combo to start with the choker fan itself, I'm going to break it down starting from there. Also, to keep the tutorial short, I'm going to assume that you can already do a choker fan. Okay, to start off this combo, you're going to do a regular choker fan, which ends in this position where you have the balisong between these three fingers like so. Now, what you can do is you could kind of do the transfer from here, but what I like to do is that transition where you go from a choker fan into a palm fan, which looks like this. Kind of like that movement, but without doing the palm fan. So you'd be getting it like in this position. So how are you going to do that? If you know how to do the choker fan, you just do a choker fan. But when you get to this part, you're going to remove your ring finger. So it'll be just between your index and middle. And then you're going to kind of bring it in closer and kind of bring your thumb around until you're into this position. Now, once you've done the choker fan and moved into this position with this hand, you're going to bring in your non-dominant hand for the Firestarter transfer. So a couple of things to note about this, and this goes for any transfer. I think it looks a lot cooler when you're doing a transfer move to kind of bring in your hand at the last second versus when you're like getting ready for it, you kind of have your hand hovering there and then it's right there. Now, of course, it's a lot easier to do it that second way. And I think if you're not really being intentional about it, that's what you gravitate towards. And that's fine, especially when you're learning the trick. Don't worry if your hand is right there when you do the transfer. But I think it looks a lot cooler if you kind of just get it at the last second. Now, how to actually do the Firestarter, and I would say this is the easiest part of the whole combo, is you're going to want to take your non-dominant hand and plant it on the handle. You want to do it right in the heel, because when you're doing this trick, the distance along your hand determines how much the balisong can spin. So if you bring your other hand here and then you start it, you're not going to be able to spin as much as if you bring it here and then spin it. And so yeah, it's pretty simple. You just have them in between your hand and then you just roll it along. Now, it's important to make sure that the blade and the handle are separated when they spin. You don't want them like to spin together. But honestly, because you're coming from a choker fan where it's already going to be spinning, this should be really easy to keep it spinning in a proper manner. So after you do the Firestarter, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to spin it in your offhand for a brief moment. But in order to be able to spin it well, you're actually going to, during the Firestarter, start the transfer to the other hand. And so what that's going to look like is as you're spinning it, you're actually going to curl your offhand's fingers together and put your thumb on the edge of the handle. And so that way you'll be ready and in the position to then spin it in your fingertips. So basically you're going to do the Firestarter and curl it into your fingers. And then you're just basically going to continue twisting your fingers around. Something important to note is when you're holding it in your offhand, if your hand is at how you would normally hold it, where it's, your arm is resting down here, it's going to be pretty difficult to spin the knife. I notice I feel a lot of tension in these tendons, but if you just simply raise up your elbow and kind of rotate so your hand is over the knife, it makes it a lot easier to spin. And so that's something that is kind of as you're doing the Firestarter and curling and transferring, as you can see my arm's raising up, so it's going to be raising into that position where you're over top of the knife. That way you're already ready to spin the knife around. Something I realized is this is the most common place where I mess up the trick, where the choker fan stops. And if it stops, or honestly, if it just slows down too much, it'll be really awkward and won't look good and hard to recover. So this is very important that you keep the knife spinning. Similar to the choker fan itself, it's less of you spinning the knife and giving it that energy, and more of the knife has that momentum and is already spinning. And so you want your fingers of your offhand to just be continuing that, just basically not getting in the way and just adding a little extra spin. I think it helps to think about speeding up through this motion, or really speeding up through this motion the whole time it's in your offhand to make sure that you don't slow down and stop the knife. So your offhand is going to briefly be spinning the knife all by itself, but it's really only like a half, maybe 3/4 of a rotation. It's not that much before the next movement where you're basically grabbing the knife and going into a regular choker fan. This transfer isn't too difficult because once again, similar to the Firestarter, this should already be spinning well. So you're just basically just going into a choker fan. That should feel pretty normal. An important thing to note though, is when you're doing this part, you're going to want to be, instead of just grabbing the knife like this, you're going to be reaching around like this, basically to kind of already like wind up. So that way it'll be natural to go right into the spin of the choker fan. Of course, you can finish the choker fan however you want. You can keep going into different combos, or how I do in the short is I bring it around to this position and I just really swing it around, kind of grab it between my thumb and index, or like the side of my hand, and then close it. I really like how this combo really keeps the momentum of the knife going in that continuous motion. And if you like that part as well, then you're gonna wanna check out the video on screen, which will take you to a tutorial how to do this combo, which keeps the Balisong flowing in the reverse direction.